episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 208, The Joy of Water Pokemon. The episode begins with Ash and the gang arriving at a lake, which Misty recognizes as the famous Lake Lucid, which Brock confirms as he checks it in his guidebook. Ash questions how Misty knew about the lake, even without the help of Brock's guidebook, and Misty reveals that she had heard about the lake's Pokemon Center, hearing stories that every trainer should take the opportunity to come visit the center. As Ash questioned what made this center so special, Misty pointed out to him that it was currently sitting on water on the lake, and explained how that fit with what made the center so famous, being that it had a specialty of caring for specifically water Pokemon, which explained why Misty was so intrigued by it. Just then, Pikachu notices something bubbling in the water, and right as he alerts Ash and the gang of this, the source of the bubbles was then revealed as a person in scuba gear emerged from the water, carrying a Goldeen that looked pretty injured. Brock, being the simp that he was somehow able to instantly recognize the fact that the person in scuba gear was a girl. Brock was only able to further pinpoint the girl's identity when she called over her 2 Chansey to help her put some new bandages on Goldeen, as well as put it on a form of a water stretcher, which also acted as a fish tank. All of this evidence made Brock believe that the person inside the scuba gear was a Nurse Joy, which was revealed to be correct, as Nurse Joy then took off her scuba suit, revealing herself, leading Brock to flirt with her as usual. Misty does pull Brock away because of this, also as usual, but this time, it's not because she was annoyed at him for talking to the Nurse Joy, as she respected the Nurse Joy herself as well, very much, due to her specifically caring for water Pokemon. Being absolutely starstruck with joy that there was a Nurse Joy that loved water Pokemon as much as she did. Apparently, even though the center specialized in treating water Pokemon, it wasn't opposed to helping out other Pokemon either, as Nurse Joy turned her attention to Pikachu and saw that he looked pretty exhausted, so she invited Ash and the gang to come into the Pokemon Center so that she could treat Pikachu. In Brock's excitement of wanting to have some alone time with Nurse Joy, he blocks off Misty and Ash from coming into the center and runs in with Nurse Joy, only for Nurse Joy to remind him that the entire reason why she invited them in was so that she could heal Pikachu, so if Pikachu wasn't going to come in, then she wouldn't let Brock in anyways. This leads Brock to apologize to Ash and Misty and let them inside, with Misty telling Brock not to worry about it, explaining that she understood why Brock liked this Nurse Joy so much. Ash, on the other hand, did not understand why Brock and Misty were so enamored by this Nurse Joy. Sure, she would treat water Pokemon, but so did every other Nurse Joy, just not to this big of an extent. Brock then explains that upon realizing that this Nurse Joy worked for the Lucid Lake Pokemon Center, he recalled that he had a book that was written by this Nurse Joy, and that's why he was so impressed by her, because the book that she wrote was really quite interesting. As Brock mentions the title of the book, A Spring Without Pokemon, Joy overhears him and corrects Brock that she didn't write the book, but her grandmother did 50 years ago. She then explains the contents of the book, clarifying that Lake Lucid used to be polluted by factories and was a wasteland as a result, which was uninhabitable by anyone. Clarifying that the source of the pollution being factories was found out by her grandmother, who reported this in the book. Ash and Misty questioned if the polluted factories were still around, since the water looked very clear and unpolluted currently. Upon hearing about pollution, Brock pulls out a second book that apparently was written by this Nurse Joy, but Nurse Joy once again clarifies that she didn't write this book either, and her mom did. She explains the contents of the book, also answering Misty and Ash's question on why the water was currently not polluted, by explaining that her mother had detailed her experience of depolluting the water and put it inside the book. Further explaining that her mother had hired a whole bunch of workers to clean up the water, and in the process, the source of the pollution with all the factories was revealed to be Muck and Grimer, who had entered the water to help with the factories, but polluted them in the process. So, Nurse Joy's mother had the Grimer and Muck removed, which restored the conditions of the lake. Adding that because of the restored conditions, a whole bunch of water Pokemon came to live in the lake, and that's why she specialized in caring for so many water Pokemon. Adding that she also cared for the lake as well. Brock was in utter amazement at both of these books and their stories, so he asked Nurse Joy to sign both of them for him, with Nurse Joy claiming that she didn't want to, since she wasn't the original author herself, so she didn't feel right. Brock was somewhat disappointed, but everyone was cheered up, as they then saw several of the water Pokemon chilling in the water, such as a Magikarp, Dugong, a Starmie, a Tentacool, and also explains that not only did she treat the water Pokemon if they were sick or injured, but she helped them build their physical and emotional strength. Upon hearing this, Brock got the idea to get a personal session with Nurse Joy, explaining that he needed her help to build up his emotional strength, leading Misty to pull him away as usual, countering that Brock would just end up getting rejected by Nurse Joy, which would in turn damage his emotional state, not help it by any means. Just then, Ash and the gang see a pair of Dugong and a Seadra battling each other, and panic that the Pokemon may get injured, as they both used water gun on each other. Nurse Joy clarifies, though, that the Pokemon fought like this all the time, and were just doing it at her command as a form of training so that they could improve their skills and therefore become more fit and healthier. Knowing that no other Nurse Joy went as far as to train the Pokemon they treated, Brock commented that this Nurse Joy was truly special for the world-class care that she was giving to these Pokemon. He claims that a Nurse Joy this awesome had to have a book written, just as her mother and grandmother did. However, as he goes looking for a book in his backpack, hoping that he might have had one, Nurse Joy tells him that his efforts would be futile, as she had not written a book. However, she does clarify that she plans on writing a book eventually called An Autumn Harvest of Pokemon, and tells Brock to pick that one up if he wants. Meanwhile, Team Rocket was spying on Ash and the gang talking to Nurse Joy through the water in their new sub, the Tentacruel sub. Yes, that's right, they ditched the Magikarp sub, just like they had ditched the Gyarados sub, and now they're in a Tentacruel sub. Anyways, as James was looking through the periscope, he declared that Team Rocket should get not only Ash's Pikachu, but all of the water Pokemon around the Pokemon Center. Jesse agreed with this, but right as Jesse and James were driving in the sub toward the Pokemon Center, they were grabbed by an actual Tentacruel, who had mistaken Team Rocket for another actual Tentacruel, and was dragging them down, crying out several times. Meowth revealed what Tentacruel was saying with these cries, being that it wanted to battle, and get some practice in. Obviously, Team Rocket were not in a position to refuse at this point, so the Tentacruel began battling by sending out a supersonic attack, which affects Team Rocket even inside the confines of the submarine, and makes them faint. Due to the submarine obviously not fighting back, Tentacruel gets disappointed with this unsatisfactory training, and decides to let Team Rocket's sub go, as the sub floats back up to the surface, right as Ash and the gang go inside the Pokemon Center, with Joy determined to heal Pikachu up, which she does by giving him an electric recharge, utilizing an electric machine, which vastly improves Pikachu's mood. As Ash thanked Nurse Joy, Misty stated that she wanted Nurse Joy to treat her Pokemon, since she wanted to see what her specialized water treatment could do to them. Unexpectedly, Nurse Joy reveals that she would not treat Misty's water Pokemon, leaving Ash and the gang immensely shocked. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they had resurfaced in their Tentacruel submarine, and James was still looking for the Periscope, but instead of Ash and the gang this time, he spotted a pipeline, which he believed led into the Pokemon Center, so he decided to head in so that he could steal some of the Pokemon in there. Meanwhile, back in the Pokemon Center, Misty was trying to convince the Nurse Joy to help her Pokemon, not understanding why she wouldn't, as she explained that all of her Pokemon were water types, so Nurse Joy should be very good with helping them. However, Nurse Joy clarified that she would only help Misty's Pokemon if they weren't water types, just like how she had helped Ash's Pikachu. Ash and the gang were obviously even more confused by this, as the center was known for treating water Pokemon. So she thinks that Nurse Joy was just playing a little prank on her or some shit, so she gets out all of her Pokeballs and tries to hand them to Nurse Joy, leading her to back away in fear and scream she hates water Pokemon multiple times. Ash and the gang questioned why this was, with Misty especially questioning, as she commented how her dream of meeting Nurse Joy had turned into a nightmare. Why the fuck Nurse Joy ran a center that was known for curing water Pokemon if she hated them and didn't treat them, leading Nurse Joy to remind her that just because she hated water Pokemon didn't mean that she didn't treat them all the time, explaining that that's why she wore her scuba diving suit, so that she didn't have to touch the water Pokemon directly. She then puts her scuba gear on and offers to treat Misty's Pokemon, stating that she just forgot that she could put it on since she was so frightened by the water Pokemon. But now that she remembered, she would happily treat them. Upon learning that Joy hated water Pokemon though, Misty didn't trust her to give the Pokemon adequate care anymore, so she refused the help, with Nurse Joy assuring her that she treated all her patients equally, regardless of if she hated them or not. But Misty still wasn't sure. Joy assured her once again, however, that she wouldn't let her bias against water Pokemon get in the way of treating them, stating that the Pokemon Center was known for treating water Pokemon, and this wasn't enough for Misty to agree, but only under the condition that she could carry her Pokeballs into the treatment area, as she still was somewhat skeptical that Nurse Joy would try and do something to drop them. Nurse Joy was completely fine with this, as she hated having to carry things with her scuba gear's pincers. So, Nurse Joy and Ash and the gang go to the treatment area of the Pokemon Center, where they immediately spot the Goldeen from earlier, who was recovering, along with a Staryu, a Dugong, a Tentacruel, all in fish tanks, with a large central pool in the middle, where all of the water was sent from to get into the tanks. They also spot Nurse Joy's Chansey, who were helping the Goldeen, just as Nurse Joy had requested them to, and this leads Nurse Joy to thank the Chansey, explaining to Ash and the gang that it was thanks to her Chansey that she didn't have to touch the water Pokemon that often, since she would mostly just do the finding, and the Chansey would do a lot of the caring. Although clarifies that the tanks themselves also do a lot of the caring as well, since a lot of water Pokemon just need a safer environment to relax, and this tank gives them that. Just then, a roar was heard to be coming from a Gyarados who was also in a tank. Despite Misty loving water Pokemon, she was frightened by the Gyarados roar. Ash makes fun of Misty for getting scared, since he liked Gyarados for how powerful it was, and he knew that Gyarados' intimidation was what made it so powerful in the first place. However, Joy clarified to him that the only reason why the Gyarados was angry right now with the roaring was because it had sustained a neck injury, so it was pretty bitter. Despite knowing why the Gyarados was angry though, this didn't mean that Nurse Joy wasn't terrified of it. I mean, if she was terrified of water Pokemon, of course she was terrified of Gyarados, so this led her to tease Misty that it seemed as though even she could be afraid of water Pokemon as well, using that to prove her point that water Pokemon were scary. Misty rebuttals that just because one water type was scary didn't mean they all were, and that Nurse Joy should really give them more of a chance so that she could actually gain some knowledge on water Pokemon, stating that that also could even help her get over her fear if she learned the truth about water Pokemon. But Nurse Joy assured Misty that she already knew plenty about water Pokemon, even the Gyarados that she was scared of, saying that she knew Gyarados had large heads, so she trained it to build muscles to support those heads, essentially making its lower body stronger to support its upper body. She also studied all the water Pokemon that she didn't like, and was able to make special diets and special treatments for the water Pokemon to improve their strengths, which is part of what gave the Pokemon Center such a notorious reputation for treating water Pokemon, even if she was scared of them, stating that just like how she had agreed to put her differences for water Pokemon aside and help Misty, she had done the same for all of the water Pokemon in her center as well. Misty doubted that Nurse Joy actually had enough knowledge of water Pokemon if she hated them, but Joy assured her that she did, stating that she knew so much that that was going to be the theme of her new book, essentially being a water Pokemon treatment encyclopedia. This just led Misty to bitterly reply that Nurse Joy shouldn't write her own book with that information, stating that the information was probably false since she wouldn't even touch water Pokemon, so she clearly couldn't understand them at all, especially how water Pokemon felt. Brock, wanting to defend his crush still, told Misty to stop getting so angry, explaining that she was being too harsh towards Nurse Joy, leading Misty to reveal that the reason why she was being so harsh was because ever since she was a little kid, she always had a dream to meet the Nurse Joy at Lake Lucid here and have her check out her water Pokemon to get her approval from them. But now that she saw that this Nurse Joy didn't even like water Pokemon, she was disappointed that she had put so much hope into eventually meeting this Nurse Joy, stating that she wished she idolized someone else instead who actually did like water Pokemon. This led Nurse Joy to apologize to Misty for disappointing her, and revealing that she didn't always used to hate water Pokemon, and she had developed the fear when she was a little kid when an incident happened to her. Misty questioned what this incident was, leading Nurse Joy to reveal her backstory with her mother. One day, the two of them were out surveying some of the water Pokemon in Lake Lucid, particularly some Remoraid, who mysteriously had a bigger population than the last time her and her mother had checked on them. Unfortunately, while Nurse Joy and her mother were in the boat surveying, one of the Remoraid popped out of the lake and squirted her in the face with water gun for a long time, which caused her to freak out and fall into the water. Nurse Joy's mother tried to pull her out instantly, but before she could, a whole school of Remoraid then surrounded her and all used water gun on her, which severely traumatized Nurse Joy, even though the water gun had applied enough force to push her back onto the boat. Nurse Joy's mother tried her best to comfort Nurse Joy, and assumed that Nurse Joy would eventually get over her fear and still be able to properly take care of the Pokemon Center. However, Nurse Joy was truly scarred, and she had never gotten over her fear. This story did not help Misty become any less disappointed in Nurse Joy at all, as she stated that one incident with the Remoraid shouldn't have made her become afraid of every single water Pokemon, and adds that if Nurse Joy really was that scared of water Pokemon, then she should have just kept the center run by her mother instead, leading Nurse Joy to remind her that her mother really wanted her to take over the center, so that was the main reason why she decided to do it. This just gives Misty more ammunition, as she then argues that this just made Nurse Joy even less qualified, since she clearly didn't enjoy her job and just did it to try and please her mother, but Nurse Joy assured her that she was happy doing her job, as she enjoyed healing Pokemon and being able to be out at Lake Lucid all the time. She just wasn't fond of water types that much, but like she had said previously, she tried not to let that get in the way of her job. Just then, Team Rocket appeared in their Tentacruel sub, having used the pipeline from earlier to go straight into the pool that was at the center of all the tanks. Their initial strategy was to try and fool Ash and the gang and Nurse Joy by appearing as a real Tentacruel and then swooping in to steal all the Pokemon. However, Nurse Joy was able to spot that the Tentacruel was fake right away, obviously because it looked extremely robotic, which led Team Rocket to give up on this plan and reveal themselves as they did their motto, stating their plan to capture all of the water Pokemon, and going down into the water to do an acrobatics routine to make their motto more interesting. Surprisingly, Ash was actually shocked by all this, because unlike Nurse Joy, he didn't grasp that the Tentacruel was fake. Fucking dumbass. With their motto done, and not having impressed anyone, they bitterly get back into their Tentacruel mech and extend one of its tentacles to grab Pikachu. Pikachu manages to dodge, but Team Rocket retaliate by sending in multiple tentacles at once, and these were too many for Pikachu to dodge at once, so it ends up getting caught inside multiple tentacles. However, Pikachu then goes for a Thunderbolt, but James was not concerned whatsoever, as the tentacles were made out of rubber, so the electricity would do absolutely nothing. However, Jesse reminded him that the Tentacruel bot had just come out of the water, so now it was wet and would conduct electricity better, even if it was made out of rubber. Before Jessie could finish her warning, though, Wobbuffet then popped out its Pokeball forcibly, distracting her, meaning that the warning was never fully completed, as Jessie was revealed to be right, as the Thunderbolt was enough to shatter Team Rocket's Tentacruel sub. Before Team Rocket could go blasting off, though, several of the pieces of their shattered Tentacruel sub hit Gyarados' tank, shattering it, and another piece hit a control panel in the Pokemon Center that opened up a valve in the pool, which sucked Team Rocket back into the water, where they had come from. Team Rocket wasn't the only thing to get sucked in through the valve, as was the water that was in Gyarados' now shattered tank, along with Nurse Joy's protective scuba gear that she had since removed. To make matters worse, the Gyarados was so angry and desperate when it was removed out of the shattered tank that it managed to break its neck brace, which meant that it could try and eat people in anger. Ash, despite all this, decides to try and help the Gyarados by trying to put its neck brace back on and put Gyarados into the central pool of water. However, Brock stops him, warning Ash that since Gyarados was so angry, it would likely attack if Ash tried to do anything. Ash didn't care though, and he tried to go up to the Gyarados anyways, but he was stopped in his tracks by Nurse Joy, who said that it was her responsibility since she was the nurse of the Pokemon Center, not Ash. Misty jumps in, stating that Ash would likely do a better job since he could actually handle water Pokemon, but Joy simply reassured Misty yet again that she knew that her duty as a nurse came first before her fear for water Pokemon, stating that she would prove to Misty that she was capable of helping the water Pokemon, just like how her mother and grandmother would have been. Misty rebuttals that she wouldn't be able to do anything without her suit, but Nurse Joy simply ignored her as she walked up to the Gyarados and somehow managed to touch it, even through her fears and without her suit. She was of course very nervous, but she continued to touch Gyarados anyway, specifically on Gyarados' crest, explaining that she needed to touch it at the right place to calm it down. Sure enough, touching it on its head was enough to do so, which impressed Ash and the gang, especially Misty, who finally realized that Nurse Joy did have knowledge on water Pokemon after all, especially if she knew how to calm down a Pokemon like Gyarados. With the Gyarados calmed down, Nurse Joy's two Chansey take the opportunity to place a new neck brace on it, which calms the Gyarados down even more, as it numbs its pain. However, Gyarados was so calm that it breathed a sigh of relief, breathing all over Nurse Joy, which actually ended up freaking her out a bit more, to the point where she had to calm herself down by reciting some lines about how no Pokemon was better or worse and all were equal, which Ash pointed out sounded familiar, leading Brock to reveal that it was a line from her grandmother's book. Nurse Joy then says another line about how any song of a Pokemon is sweet if it can be heard, which Misty recognizes as a line from her mother's book, stating her assumption that Nurse Joy must have been reciting lines that came from her grandmother and mother to comfort herself and inspire her to help the Gyarados even though she was scared. These lines seemed to work, holding off Nurse Joy's fear for a little bit, as she was able to order her two Chansey to put Gyarados in another water tank, and also come over to Misty and offer to finally check up her water Pokemon, even without her suit. However, the lines weren't enough to keep the frightened feelings repressed forever, though, as they then overwhelm her, causing her to faint. Although Misty was proud of Nurse Joy for being able to face her fear for long enough that she was able to almost actually examine her water Pokemon like she originally wanted her to. However, despite Misty now not being nearly as critical of the Nurse Joy was critical of herself when she woke up, sad that she still wasn't able to touch Misty's water Pokemon. Although complimented Misty, saying that she was sure that the water Pokemon were in great condition since Misty was their trainer, pleasing Misty as she had technically gotten an evaluation from the Nurse Joy at the lake just like she had always wanted, even if it wasn't the exact one that she was expecting. Misty then questioned Nurse Joy on if she thought that she would be able to touch all the other water Pokemon if she managed to keep reciting lines from her mother and grandmother's books, but Nurse Joy expressed her doubts, believing that she would never fully recover from her fear, but assuring Misty that she would try her best to touch the water Pokemon regardless of her fear, so that she could excel as a nurse, just as her mother and grandmother had. Misty gives her some words of encouragement, stating that she was sure that she could become just as popular as her mother and grandmother if she ended up writing her book, assuring Nurse Joy that all three of them would buy a copy of her book as soon as it came out. Ash and the gang then say goodbye to Nurse Joy and leave the lake as they continue on their journey to Olivine City.